Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Seance. And this is a new horror film coming your way, and it's about Camille, who is a young woman who starts at Fairfield Academy, which is a school for young women, and after the death of one of the students, she takes her place in her room, and things are a little tense with her and the other girls at the school, except she does develop this relationship with Helena. And so she has one girl on her side and everybody else is not a big fan of hers. They all get into detention. Weird things start to happen as this film started off with a seance because it's the name of the title, so must have done it somewhere. And this is an interesting film from Simon Barrett, who is been a writer on Your Next, The Guest, VHS, so has a background in these kinds of films, and this definitely has that kind of pulpy kind of horrorness that some of those films did. Because I kind of think about it this way: there's studio kinds of horror films today that, like the Conjuring films, like the Conjuring versus very specifically, this is dealing with some weird stuff. And then you have A24, which is very atmospheric, very art house kind of horror films. And then you have a studio like Blumhouse that feels very pulpy. It's like they watched 80s and 90s horror films and are just like, yes, I love this. There's some level of camp to it, maybe not necessarily camp, but there's some kind of attitude about it. And you have this film, it feels very much like that. The tricky thing about Seance is that for the first 2/3 of this film, it feels like very much a by the numbers, you feel like this is exactly what you're expecting kind of thing. And to be perfectly honest, I guessed who was doing all these murders of these young women as they slowly start getting taken out. At least I partly guessed what was going on. So, and that's the thing, partly. This film is partly predictable, and then the last third of this actually really grabbed me and kind of went to the next level. It had some twists and turns that were interesting. It built off of some plants that Barrett put throughout his script that really paid off in the end, and it led to some really well shot, really high energy kind of genre thrills that I really enjoyed. I'm like, why couldn't the rest of this movie kind of capture this kind of feel to it? Because you have Kareem Hussein, who is the cinematographer here, and it's really well shot, it's well edited, it's a fun time, especially in that third act. There's definitely moments earlier in the film where it relies too heavily on jump scares, and this film is one of those interesting situations because it's questioning, is something supernatural going on, or is this like a Scooby-Doo kind of thing, and it's just like you pull back the mask and it's somebody, or maybe it's a little bit of both. And that's one of the most interesting things about the film, but it never really capitalized, I felt like, on both things. And there's a lot of moving pieces here, and as this film, which, to check, I don't know if Barrett was director on VHS 2, but really hasn't done a whole lot of directing. This was an interesting mixed bag of a feature debut here for Barrett. And I'm sitting here thinking, I would really like to see more from him with more fleshed out ideas, because this felt like a lot of different kinds of ideas. It definitely leaned into some fun at times, including the music I really enjoyed from composer Tobias Vehik, and there's some things about this film that didn't work for me, were really cliched and tropey and leaned too heavily into obnoxious jump scares. But there's other elements of this film that had like this pulpy kind of horror movie attitude about it, and in general I think the group of young girls in this film did a really fine job. You have Suki Waterhouse, who plays Camille right at the center here, who has been in things like Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, and the Divergent movies, and the Broken Hearts Club. So she's been in some big things. And then you have Ella-Rae Smith, who played Helena, who's the one she makes this connection with. And in general, I think this young cast does a fine job, and I had some fun with it. It's not something where I'm like, I would definitely rewatch this, because I don't know if I want to sit through the first 2/3 of this kind of just like, I've seen this before kind of thing before it actually gets a little bit more interesting, and that's a tough sell. But if you're a huge fan of horror films and stuff like that, I think you'll get a lot out of this. I would definitely recommend this, but I don't think this is something that I would tell some of my non-horror friends, like, this will change your mind. Like, this isn't The Thing, this isn't The Shining, this isn't some of the, like, The Exorcist, like some of those, like, classic horror films. This is, you know, a pulpy fun time at the movies. So it's on VOD right now. I'm sure it's in theaters somewhere, but I had some fun with Seance. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.